He's known for being a Federalist. Alexander Hamilton. Excellent. And what political person was an anti-Federalist? Millington Smith, definitely. But have we ever heard of him?
No.
We have now, but not usually. Who was an anti-Federalist that became president? Wrote the Declaration of Independence.
Wasn't it the same?
Say it again.
Thomas Jefferson.
It's Thomas Jefferson. Okay. So when George Washington became president, he picked people that he'd worked with before to be in his cabinet. Now, what is a cabinet? Not with dishes. This is a little different.
Like his people,
Yeah, it's his posse. It's the people that advise him on specific issues. So Alexander Hamilton actually fought with George Washington. It was he's called his aide de camp, which is like his personal assistant during the American Revolution. So he knew Alexander Hamilton very well. And so he made him the Secretary of the Treasury. Okay. And do you know what bill he's on? Like money?
Nope.
Alexander Hamilton?
Isn't he on the 5?
He's on the 10. Yeah. So he was definitely wanting. Remember, he wanted the industrial side of America to make money for the country. So he wanted a Bank of America or the United States, and he pushed for that. So he was very financially oriented. Now, Thomas Jefferson, on the other hand, who was a founding father, wrote the Declaration of Independence, was also in George Washington's cabinet. He was a Secretary of State, and that means he was like in charge of foreign affairs. Okay. But Thomas Jefferson wanted an agricultural society, right? So, but these two guys had to work together, and they're on opposite ends of this, not spectrum, but politically, they were on the opposite sides. They had to work together, okay? And when you work together with someone that you may not like, what might occur? Conflict, yes. So that could be like passive-aggressive conflict, or it could be outright fighting, that kind of thing. Yes. And for these two gentlemen, it started off passive-aggressive, and it didn't reach blows or anything, but they definitely hated each other's guts, okay? And it caused conflict within our government. So if there's conflict within government, what progress is made?
Absolutely nothing.
Little, not a whole lot, okay? So what I'd like to do today is maybe try to understand or see what the conflict was, or in one case, and what does it say about each other, these two gentlemen, and why do we even need to know who these founding fathers were and a little bit about their life? Because obviously it's interesting. It's interesting enough to make a musical about one of the fellows. Actually, both are in Hamilton, the musical. So why do we need to know, like, in detail who these guys were? What do you think, Ruth?
You know the kind of personality.
Yeah, why do we need to know their personality?
So that you can understand what everyone in that past went through.
Well, I think so. I think that's part of it. Yeah. So a lot of times these students hear George Washington and they're like, oh, Thomas Jefferson, oh my goodness, he did so much. Alexander Hamilton, wow. When in reality, they're just people doing their thing. And it's kind of funny to find out the real person, I guess. So we are going to read 2 letters, one from each gentleman. And this is going to help us find out a little bit more about these guys. Okay? That's why you need a highlighter today. Because we're going to apply those skills, those historical skills, What's the first skill that we should do?
Sources.
Yeah, we gotta source these things. So when you get your handout, I want you to glance through real quick and see if you can figure out who wrote whatever it is and when they wrote it. You can highlight that already. Okay. Go ahead and highlight who wrote what and when they wrote it. So you go ahead and do it. Okay. All right, so what are these letters? Oh, I already told you. What are these documents? They are letters. Can you determine who they are to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who are they to?
George Washington.
They're both to George Washington. Who are they from?
Thomas Jefferson.
Yes.
Alexander Hamilton.
Hamilton and Jefferson. Both are writing to Mr. Washington. When were these letters written?
1792.
You got to be more specific than that.
September 9th.
There you go.
August 23rd.
No, not August 23rd.
He received them.
He received a letter from Mr. Washington. Jefferson did on the 23rd. So a lot of people make that particular mistake. So if you go down to the bottom here, on both letters it says source, and it'll tell you when the date is. Okay? They were both written on the same day. Now, what do you think these letters are going to say? We know they're both to George Washington. They're both written on the same day. And if you glance through, they both received a letter from Mr. Washington about the same time. Right up at the top. What do you think these letters are going to say?
Complaints.
Maybe complaints. But complaints about what or whom? Each other. Yes. Okay. So, would anybody like to be Thomas Jefferson? Okay. So Ruth, you can be Thomas Jefferson. Amari, would you like to be Mr. Hamilton? Okay. So let's look at Mr. Jefferson first. You go right ahead.
Yes, I received your letter on August 23rd. You note that there has been internal tensions to your administration. These tensions are of great concern to me. I wish that you should know the truth.
All right, time out. So in this first paragraph, what's like the main subject here?
Internal tensions.
That's internal tensions. I would highlight that. Yeah, stuff is about to go down, or has been going down, right?
I never seen.
And is Jefferson concerned about this?
Yes.
He should
I'm
be if the
concerned.
President of the United States has written to him about it. Okay.
Great concern.
All right. And what is the rest of the letter going to tell Mr. Washington?
Why?
The whole truth.
The whole truth, nothing but the truth. Well, that's what he says. Okay?
That's what they say before.
Right. So maybe highlight, you should know the whole truth. Or I wish that you should know the whole truth. Because that's what his intention, that's what his purpose is. Okay?
Shall I continue?
Yes, that's the second paragraph, please.
Okay. I have never tried to convince members of the
Legislature.
legislature to defeat the plans of the Secretary of Treasury. I value too highly their freedom of judgment. I admit that I have in private conversation disapproved of the system of the Secretary of Treasury. However, this is because the system stands against liberty, and this is designed to undermine and demolish the republic.
Okay. So who is he talking about at this point?
The thinking treasury.
Well, he doesn't even say Hamilton. That might be significant, okay? He calls him what? Secretary of Treasury, okay? So he's referring back to Mr. Hamilton. He says Secretary of Treasury twice, does not mention him by his real name. And so outwardly, he is talking about what with the Secretary of Treasury? It's in the first sentence of that paragraph.
Defeat the plans.
Yeah, defeating the plans. Okay. So, but he said he's never tried to convince the legislature. Now, what branch is the legislature? Like, what do we call it? We don't always say, oh, the legislative branch. What do we call it? Starts with a C. Congress. Okay. He's referring to Congress here. Okay, because they are the ones that pass the laws. So the Secretary of Treasury has a plan, obviously, about finance. And Jefferson says, I'm not trying to defeat those plans or get the legislature to do that. But what has he said in private conversations?
He disapproves of the system.
Okay, he disapproves. All right, maybe highlight that. So outwardly, he's not trying to persuade Congress one way or the other, but privately, he has his own opinion, and he disapproves of the system of the Secretary of the Treasury. And then he says why. And this is where I think he gets a little dramatic. Okay? A little bit. He's like, this is because his system stands against liberty, and he's trying to crush the republic. Let's think about that. This is a person who fought in the American Revolution to be independent from Great Britain. Do you really think Alexander Hamilton joined politics to crush our nation?
No.
I don't think so. Okay? So I feel like Mr. Jefferson is really kind of dramatic in this last sentence. Okay? Now, I think Jefferson thinks that's what will happen to the republic. But anyway, there you go.
Shall I continue?
Continue, please, Mr. Jefferson.
Alrighty. I would like for these tensions to fade away. And my respect for you is enough motivation to wait to express my thoughts until I'm again a private citizen. At this point, however, I reserve the right about these issues and concern the Republic.
Okay. So what does he want to accomplish at this point?
He wants to make all those things fade away, not exist anymore.
All right. So he wants everything to go smooth. So what does he promise to do?
He's gonna wait to express his thoughts.
He's going to wait to express his thoughts. So let me highlight that, because that's what his action is. Okay. Until he is a what?
Private citizen.
Private citizen. That means he's not into politics anymore. So that's going to be a while. He doesn't know that yet. But we do, right? All right. But then he said, once I'm a private citizen, then I reserve the right to actually write about it. I think that's fair. Here's where it gets really cool, or actually funny. Continue, Ruth.
Okay. I will not let my retirement be ruined by the lies of a man whose history, if history starts with lunacy, will remember a person who works to destroy liberty. Still, I repeat that I hope I will not have to write such a thing.
Okay. What is his emotional state in that paragraph?
Annoyed and mad.
I think he's pretty upset. Okay, enough to say what about Hamilton?
If history even stops to notice him.
Yeah, stoops to notice him. So they have to get real low to find out who Hamilton is.
I never read
That's
it.
a huge burn. That's not good. He doesn't even think Hamilton will be recognized later in the history books, which is ironic since we're talking about him and a musical's been made about him. That kind of thing. Yes. Yes.
I feel like if somebody went back in time, like, saw this, they would freaking burn.
Yeah, for sure.
Everyone would be like, what's
For
this?
sure. So I would maybe highlight if history stoops to notice him. I think that just shows Jefferson's view on Hamilton. Okay. I will not let my retirement be ruined by the lies of a man. You know,
Wow,
that
I
kind of
do
thing.
get the dramatic.
So, right?
Sounds like an anime. Makes me think of like a Twitter fight with all this.
Yes. Like mean tweets.
Yeah,
You ever seen
and
that?
not tagging the person.
Right.
Everybody knows they're talking about.
Exactly. Exactly.
This is basically an argument with literally. Okay, shall I?
Yeah. Hashtag Secretary of Treasury.
Shall I continue?
All right. If you will finish it out.
Okay. I trust that you know that I am not an enemy to the Republic, nor a great stead to the country's money, nor a traitor, as Hamilton has written about me. In the meantime, I am with great and sincere
Affection.
and respect, dear sir, your most obedient and most humble servant, Thomas Jefferson.
Okay.
The end.
So what is Hamilton? We finally have his name, by the way, at the end of the letter.
Finally.
What has Hamilton written about Jefferson?
But he's an enemy to the Republic.
That he's an enemy to the Republic and
A traitor to money.
a waster of the country's money and
A traitor.
wow.
I
So
feel
so
bad
now
for
we
you.
see from Jefferson's perspective what Hamilton thinks of him. Okay.
And then he's going over here like, I know he's written about me.
Now what do you think about this last little farewell address? I'm with great and sincere affection and respect, dear sir, your most obedient and most humble servant.
I think he's right.
I think he's like.
It does sound like yes. So who is he writing to?
George Washington.
George Washington, one of the most well-respected men of that time period, and even at this point today.
I think at that ending sentence was like trying to pretend that he was trying to be nice.
Also, I think that they just like said that a lot.
Yeah. So from our perspective, it sounds like sucking up or brown nosing.
Yep.
But in reality, it's not, because if you look up the next letter, which we will, it says the same thing. Okay. This was a very common way to end a letter. What are they trying to show? Respect. Great respect. Okay. So it's not a suck up. Like if we said it today, you would think it's sarcastic, and so I know where you're coming from. But this was 1792, right? Totally different culture at the time. Well, our Hamilton left. Okay.
Should I start now?
Sure.
I have received your letter of August 26th. I sincerely regret that they have been made to feel uneasy in your administration. I will do anything to smooth the path of your administration and heal the differences, though I consider myself deeply injured by it.
Okay. I love these letters. These are great. All right. So obviously he has also received a letter from Mr. Washington. And how does he feel about that? So he's offended by Mr. Washington?
He's been how dare you?
No, not from Mr. Washington. He regrets what?
That you've been made uneasy.
that you have been made to feel uneasy in your administration. So he's apologizing for that Mr. Washington is put in a place that he feels uncomfortable. You might want to highlight that. So what is Hamilton willing to do? Anything. But then he ends this great sentence by saying what?
He's the deeply injured party.
Okay, what does that mean in 8th grade language?
He gets butthurt.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right. So he's the one that feels, he's the most deeply, out of the two people here, he's been wronged the most. Okay, that's how he feels anyway.
So he feels like he's the longest person yet.
Yeah, so we'll see. So I love this next part here too. Amari, is it okay if she continues, or would you like to jump in? Okay. Let's do the second paragraph here.
I know that I have been an object of total opposition for Mr. Jefferson. I know from the most authentic sources that I have been from the frequent subject of the most unkind whispers by him. I have watched a party form in the legislature with the single purpose of opposing me. I believe, from all evidence I possess, that the National Gazette newspaper was instituted by Jefferson for political purposes, with its main purpose to oppose me in my department.
All right, so what is Mr. Hamilton accusing Mr. Jefferson of doing?
Propaganda against him.
Propaganda against him. What do you mean by that?
By saying horrible things about him.
How?
Whisper about them, like talking out.
So maybe whispers, but he's also done something else, according to
made a newspaper.
Yeah, so he's started a newspaper for the sole purpose of what?
Backstabbing my dude in the back.
Well, I don't think he's his dude at all.
Okay, sorry. Saying the rudest things he can
Talk bad
think
about
of.
him.
Yes. Okay.
Wait, so I guess you could say this is a diary, but you could.
But the political side of him. So I love that. You see in his writing where the italicized words, I know. So, and Hannah emphasized those. I know that this has happened. I know from authentic sources. And you know what my question would be? Who are these authentic sources he's talking about? So how does he know that unkind whispers from Mr. Jefferson has been told about him? So he's gathering evidence specifically about the National Gazette. You might want to highlight that. I'd highlight National Gazette and main purpose to oppose me. Okay.
I love this already.
So the second paragraph there, that National Gazette, which is italicized, and then that last line, main purpose to oppose me. You could even highlight the words no that are italicized. That he emphasized that himself. Okay? He emphasized that himself. Okay. Mr. Hamilton, please continue.
Nevertheless, I can truly say that besides the explanations to confidential friends, I never directly or indirectly respond to these attacks until very recently.
Okay. So he's been talking with his friends about this, but he hasn't publicly defended himself until just recently. So maybe he's had enough or whatever. Okay. Continue.
But when I saw that they were determined to oppose the banking system, which would ruin the credit and honor of the nation, I considered it my duty to resist the outrageous behavior.
Oh, it's outrageous behavior to disagree. Right? Or no? It depends on how you do it, right? Perhaps. So I think his version of outrageous behavior is creating a newspaper to oppose him. Right, because he's opposing Hamilton's ideas. He's taking it personally, y'all. Okay. So he's explaining himself. Last. Finish it out there.
Nevertheless, I pledge my honor to you, sir, and that if I shall form a plan to reunite the members of your administration, I will faithfully cooperate, and will not directly or indirectly say or do a thing to cause a fight. I have the honor to remain, sir, your most obedient and humble servant.
Oh, I love it. So the same closing, which again was culturally extremely common at the time, to show honor and respect to the person that they're writing to, especially since Mr. Washington is at a higher level of honor than the rest. But let's look at that last paragraph. Who does he want to solve the problem? No, he does not. Look back at that again. I pledge my honor to you, sir. That
He wants the members of your Washington administration.
well, he wants you. He says, if you shall form a plan.
He wants Washington to
He
solve
wants
the problem.
Washington to fix it. He doesn't want himself to fix it. He wants Washington to fix it. But he'll do whatever Washington says. Okay? What does that sound like to you? What kind of a person is that?
A follower.
A follower? And we know, though, Hamilton is actually was led before. You know, he's a leader. But
Right here, he's down a follower.
in this situation, perhaps, if he's not willing to, does he say he's sorry for causing trouble? No, he really doesn't. He said he was sorry that Mr. Washington was uncomfortable. He's like, but he didn't say he was sorry for disagreeing with Jefferson. Okay, I find that interesting. Okay. So if maybe highlight, if you shall form a plan, I will faithfully cooperate. But I love that he keeps on saying, I will not directly or indirectly respond or say. So what do these two gentlemen, who are grown men, sound like to you?
Whiny little kids.
Whiny little kids.
But hurt
He hurt me. He hurt my feelings. He's attacking my ideas. Will you do something about it?
little kids in a stretch onesie. Stretch onesie.
It's like Mr. Washington is the counselor. And two people are coming to the counselor and say, he did this, he did that. You fix it. They're not willing to come together themselves and do it. They're too hurt, I guess. All right. So what makes them different from this perspective than from people in 2020 today?
They're more like like they're kind of formal about being mean. Not people just outrightly like.
Oh, okay. So they're more formal about being hurt.
Yeah.
Because there was really no outlet at this point, right? Except for political newspapers or writing letters.
And now people usually just put it straight to social media.
And which is kind of passive aggressive if you think about it.
Yeah.
So if you're putting it, we don't need it. You can do it. Wait till 6 hours, okay? So yeah, we might put stuff on social media, but do we? Sometimes we do, I guess. But do we directly send it to them, the person that we're talking about? Yeah, it really depends. But a lot of the times, it's like just put it out there for everybody to see, and if it happens to be the person that they're talking about looks at it, it's okay with them if they see it. Yes, ma'am.
Another thing is that people don't like letters these days.
They don't want to what?
People don't write letters these days.
True.
I feel like I'm the only one who writes letters.
Well, you're not the only one.
Because I write them in my day. Come on, I write them to all my
Yeah, but
family
again,
in South Africa.
This was their own. This was like the major outlet at the time was to write letters to express their thoughts, okay, or their own personal diaries or journals, right? Yes, ma'am.
The Indian you're most obedient and humble servant. Back then that was respectful. Now people would probably get mad.
Yeah, because again, we think it might be sarcastic.
When did we stop talking like this? Because I like this a lot better.
Yeah.
I
Just
feel
the way
it changes the way we speak, changes how we see one another. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So words are important. So it is a lie that says sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That is a big lie. For some reason, we do allow words to hurt us. But in the same way, they can be turned around as well. So yeah, I feel like their level of correspondence and even speaking with one another was in a much more respectful tone. And you will find out Hamilton, although he does not like Jefferson, actually roots for him at one point. So there is a level of respect between both of these gentlemen, even though they don't like each other. Okay. Now, it's ironic what happens to Mr. Hamilton, you know?
He gets shot.
Yeah, by the Vice President of the United States. Okay? So, regardless of what you think today is like, not a whole lot has changed. Okay? They may have even been more violent back then, at an adult, at a political level. Because we'll talk about one time where a senator beats another senator in Congress almost to death. Okay?
yeah.
So it's, while things have changed culturally, I don't think human nature has. Okay? Yes, sir.
Did Alexander Hamilton ever become president?
No, he could not, according to the Constitution. Constitution states, and I think it's Article 1, that a president has 3 qualifications. You have to be a natural born citizen, be at least 35 years old, and lived in the United States for 14 years. Hamilton was born in the Caribbean islands, so therefore he could not have become president. All right.
Are there scrolls told?
Yes, they're the only 3 qualifications for president. Yes.
So you know how you say our words can never hurt me, right? Yet when I throw a dictionary at someone, they say, a dictionary.
Yeah.
It's words, and it hurts.
Very good.
It lied.
All right. So, any other observations or questions about these 2 gentlemen that I may or may not know the answer to?
Just the thought of how much conflict we had to go through to get where we are now is really
Annoying? Where do you think we should be at this point?
I just think that, like, if we didn't have a bunch of conflict, then we would end up having conflict now, but I think it's still kind of annoying.
Oh, we still have conflict. Yeah.
Especially
For sure.
about
Like, if
me.
there wasn't very much conflict back then, and there
But we would be conflicting about something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
It's kind of annoying.
It is, but it's interesting. We know how to make it work. I mean, we do know how to make it work. The weird thing is that we don't. We know what's good for us in the general sense, yet we decide not to budge on certain things for some reason.
And it's not.
Yes, ma'am?
If they ever like fight these two, like actually like go at each other and like this.
I don't know if that's the best way to solve conflict.
Aww, that sucks.
Now, we will talk about compromise. And compromise at some point is necessary and good.